Right, so I don't often get an opportunity to tell a good news story these days. Something feel good, something to warm the cockles of your heart. And for me, that's seeing the false narratives of right-wingers ground into the dirt, leaving them shamefaced and frothing about it. I get a certain joy out of such things. Film director Ken Loach was amongst a dozen artists worldwide invited to meet the Pope in the Sistine Chapel, no less, last Friday. Others included the likes of Dutch violinist Andre Rieu and sculptor Anish Kapoor. It was a mix of creatives from all manner of backgrounds. The list included apparently some people that were known to the Vatican, others that were not, some that were favourites of theirs even, though they refused to be drawn on who those might have been. But Ken Loach, to the left of this country, to those with a social conscience, really, is an absolute legend and very much a favourite amongst us. And the reasoning behind his invite amongst all of those others lends itself to that. Yes, it was an invitation to artists from across the world as part of the Catholic Church's artistic endeavours. But it was also an opportunity for Pope Francis to discuss his ideas regarding social justice with those who have platforms whereby they can also be, as they put it, catalysts for change. They were told neither art nor faith can leave things simply as they are. They can transform, move, and convert them. Art can never serve as an aesthetic. It brings peace, yet far from deadening consciences, it keeps them alert. Particularly relevant and resonant with Ken Loach particularly, the Pope went on to tell those invited to not forget the poor. They too have need of beauty and usually have no voice to make themselves heard. Well, Loach has spent his entire life being a voice for the voiceless, a voice for the unfortunate or the less fortunate, and his battery of work going back decades is a testament to that. What has got those with media vested interests and political axes to grind, wringing their hands over Ken Loach, however, was when Pope Francis told those assembled that, like the biblical prophets, you confront things that are sometimes uncomfortable. You criticise today's false myths and new idols. It's empty talk, the ploys of consumerism, the schemes of power. Well, you can imagine who might be pretty unhappy about that. Pretty much anyone who has pointed at Ken Loach, squealed antisemite, and painted him as something that he's not. And a lot of us on the left have got experience of having that same accusation levelled at us over the last several years. Loach stands with us on the issues affecting all of us on the left, all of us with a social conscience. Poverty, unemployment, grief, he stands with us. Where his accusers, well, I'm not entirely certain they stand with this country instead of another, frankly, given their behaviour. Much of the media fixates on Loach and anti-Semitism, regularly repeating the falsehood that this is why he was expelled from the Labour Party, when instead it was about associating with groups Starmer decided he didn't like, groups critical of him, criticism he cannot handle, and anyone associated with them or had ever associated with them had to go. Loach was asked to apologise for mixing with such people Loach considered his friends, and as such he refused to, and that's why he was expelled, because Starmer can't handle critics. Well, all he does is end up with more of them as a result, of course, because the man is an absolute fool. It says an enormous amount about Loach that Loach is welcomed by one of the foremost religious leaders on the planet, though, yet isn't welcome in the Labour Party, doesn't it? Who was Keir Starmer invited to meet then recently? Wasn't the Pope, was it? Oh, yes, it was Rupert Murdoch instead. Creepy Uncle Rupert, self-confessed rigger of elections. He had his annual summer party recently, and those attending from our political picture are a who's who of representatives of establishment interests, all in it together, all very much the same. After all, why else would you go to a party thrown by the proprietor of some of the most hateful news outlets globally, from the stinking fetid Sun newspaper to Fox News? Starmer, of course, regularly writes for Murdoch's said little H-rag. So little surprise, he was quick to hop over there and kiss some backside, hoping for some favourable news coverage from himself. But he was hardly alone in going. Rishi Sunak and his wife both went, of course. Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, went. Wes Streeting, the Shadow Health Secretary, went. Sadiq Khan, the Labour London Mayor, went. Anna Sarwar, the Scottish Labour leader, went. So Labour was more than amply represented. But there were, of course, plenty of Tories too. James Cleverly, Penny Mordaunt, Liz Truss, Michael Gove, Grant Shapps, Suella Braverman, Oliver Dowden. It's more a case of who in the two main parties didn't actually go. Where's the criticism of all of that? Honestly, with that much nasty all under one roof, even the cockroaches moved out, I heard. But anyway, I digress. Of course, criticism of Loach came as well as criticism of the Catholic Church for hosting him. David Baddiel, apparently a comedian, has weighed in on anti-Semitism on many occasions, even writing a book pontificating about it, or at least how he perceives it, which, given his comment regarding Loach's invitation to the Vatican, speaks for itself, because he tweeted out, "Not sure an invitation with the Pope, given the Catholic Church is an institution that only absolved Jews of deicide back in 2011, should be considered a litmus test for who may or may not be anti-Semitic." Well, call me strange if you like, but I don't think people who black up and wear pineapples on their heads in the name of comedy are necessarily the best people to comment on racism, full stop, to be honest with you. And for another thing, he's wrong. The Catholic Church passed a declaration called Nostra Aetate, meaning in our time, back in 1965. And it basically reveres the work of God in all major religions, focusing especially on the Church's relationship with both Jewish and Muslim faiths. As for the precise issue of Jewish deicide, the accusations that Jews were responsible for the killing of Jesus, as that is, this was absolved by the Catholic Church, as well as them condemning anti-Semitism in all its forms, no less, on the 19th of November 1964. So blow that one, David Baddiel. The Pope also asked for forgiveness for the crimes of his faith against the Jewish faith back in 2000, not 2011. Not that that was what Baddiel meant anyway. Blow it all out of your pineapple, Dave. Others weighed in too. The Jews Sans Frontières Twitter account said in a massive turnaround, "The best Pope ever says hi to Ken Loach, and lying racist charlatan David Baddiel takes the opportunity to pontificate. Definitely a 2 espresso morning." Commentator Greg Herriot said, "Catholics, you are all anti-Semites now. It's the rules of the culture wars. Deny it, and the accusation will just become more widespread." And Mr. V said, in order to keep alive the entirely normal notion that people who share platforms with @KenLoach16 should be barred from public office, Dave here is suggesting that the Pope and the Catholic Church might actually be anti-Semitism themselves. Hashtag it was a scam. As for Labour, well, they've kept their heads down over Ken Loach being invited to meet the Pope, and well, they might. Imagine if the Pope was a Labour member. This might be an expulsion offence, mightn't it? And he'd certainly be ruled out as a candidate to run as a Labour Metro Mayor for certain. Not that I'm sure Jamie Driscoll will be in a hurry to compare himself to the Pontiff. Ken Loach is the common denominator after all, but it should beg the question of whether Keir Starmer would refuse an audience with His Holiness himself. Would he be banning the Pope being discussed at Labour CLP meetings now? Because if the answer is no, then blocking Driscoll from standing as a mayoral candidate is every bit the factional power grab we already knew it to be, and Starmer is one grade A hypocrite. Maybe he'd be led off with an apology and 10 Hail Marys. I don't know. Who knows, though? We're only guesstimating, aren't we? The thing is, as Baddiel has shown, it's not just the Pope that can be smeared. The entire Catholic faith has been pontificated at by him, as shown in his tweet, falsely, over anti-Semitism. It absolutely has to stop now. It serves no useful purpose. It is just getting weaponized to death, and the falseness of it all is exposed for all to see as someone in a position of great influence has risen above it and treated Ken Loach as he should be, as a person of enormous influence, of empathy, and of social justice, who has shown this through all of his life's work, earning all of our respect, at least those of us not sucked in by the lamestream media, who paint a scum-writing Labour leader partying with one of the most mendacious media forces on the planet as the answer to our prayers, whilst the guy he purged, who literally makes films about the hardships Starmer should focus on, has an audience with the Pope and still gets falsely slammed as a racist, along with everyone they ever meet. Who do you have more respect for, the Pontiff or Rupert Murdoch? Because when it comes to guests of each, I know which ones I would rather hang out with. And after you've liked, shared and subscribed to the channel, as I sincerely hope you will, no fear shown in tackling the tough subjects here, my video recommendation for you on this occasion is where I covered the expulsion of Ken Loach back in 2021. Hundreds more videos to peruse whilst you're here, though. Besides, if that doesn't float your boat, there will be something else. And I hope I'll catch you on the next video. Cheers, folks.